presentation today will be ranking the worst in the world. And by the worst in the world, I mean the worst people. Serial killers. Now, these will be choosing 9 different serial killers and putting them into 3 different categories. The first one being thesis, which is going to connect their background and their childhood home to the murders and crimes they committed present day. There will be evidence and commentary, and that's going to be the evidence that the killers themselves have given to the authorities and other news stations, including themselves, as evidence. And the commentary will be the consequences, if any. And the last one will be sophistication. Now, sophistication is kind of messed up, but it's going to be ranking what they did and how complex their ideas were behind it. Now, for the first one, thesis, which earns 0 points, is going to be Carl Homka. Now, she and her husband were known as the Barbie doll killers. They were notorious for using their good looks to lure in young women to murder and abduct them. Now, Carla was growing up in a fairly normal home. There was a bit of dysfunction with fighting and alcoholism, but none of the abuse was directed towards her. So I feel like there's not a strong correlation between her past and her childhood with the murder she committed. The second, which earned 1 point for thesis, would be Edmund Kempner. Now, his childhood was worse. It was full of a lot of torment and isolation caused by his mother. His mother was an abusive alcoholic who would target him specifically as being the only male in the house. And Edmund was a big child, growing up to be around 6'9", over 300 pounds. So his mother, out of fear of the unknown, would lock him into the basement in the cold and dark to keep him from his sisters out of fear of him hurting them. And her abuse towards him has left a mental scar. A mother's connection is needed for people to develop normally. He didn't have that. So a lot of his killings was because of the way his mother treated him, and the victims that he hurt did look like his mom. So there was a correlation with some hatred there. For the first one with evidence and commentary, it's going to be the BTK Strangler. This man is Dennis Rader. He's also known as the Bind, Torture, Kill Strangler. As the name implies, he would abduct them and bind, torture, and kill them. An awful man who was living under a disguise of being a completely normal, functioning human. He would give in evidence to the police, admitting to what he'd done through letters, but as time went on, he became more and more confident, and he later went up to the police himself, asking if a floppy disk could be traced back. The police told him no, so that's what he did. He used a floppy disk to give out information of what he will do and what he did, and it was able to be traced back to his church account. After that, the police found him, and they connected the crimes and murders to him. He gave the police evidence himself. Alright, the second one would be Albert Fish. Now, this man is notorious for being an awful cannibalistic murderer amongst younger people. He didn't submit a evidence note to the police, but after an abduction, he went to a family member and wrote them a letter saying the process of it and his side of it, which I'd rather not go into detail of because it's very bad. But that letter was able to be traced. He was caught because he sent that letter in, and thankfully for that, she should not have lived another day. Alright, Ted Bundy. He is going to be earning 2 points for evidence and commentary. He was known as a handsome and very charming guy, and he used his looks to lure women into his house, or into their car, anything, to get them alone, so he can abduct them. Now, he didn't send in any letters to the police, and he didn't outright admit to it, but he was caught multiple times, and he managed to escape. That's why he's higher up in the scale, because He himself was the evidence as the known murderer, and he still managed to get out and not getting caught until the third time and staying in. For 3 points would be the Zodiac Killer. Now, he's one of America's most unknown serial killers. His crimes dated back to 1960s and 70s, and during that time, he would send in multiple letters to news stations and authorities admitting to what he's done and what he will do next. Right after the crimes, he would often call the police himself from a nearby payphone, and he would tell them what happened. Now, the police still couldn't find him. Even after loads of notes, this guy has managed to evade all traps. It was a sadistic game of cat and mouse, which he has won. And it's unknown if he will still be caught to this day or if he's alive committing more murders. And the last one for this category, earning 4 points, has to be Jack the Ripper. He is the world's most infamous serial killer. And to this day, after 120 years, he has not been caught. And he during the time of his murders, he would often send in letters to not only the authorities, but to news stations. Now, the reasoning behind this, which was such a smart idea for him, which is still pretty bad, he ended up flooding the police's inbox with hundreds and hundreds of letters, over 700. Because after the news stations would report his original letters, multiple people came up either as a prank and trying to impersonate him as Jack the Ripper. There would be people coming in as how to catch him and trying to give him tips, and others just saying that they have seen him or have some clue towards him. Well, this has left them so they couldn't analyze each and every letter to track him down, which was already tough enough to do in the 1800s. So he was able to escape after committing hundreds of crimes against ladies of the night, and he's never been caught. There have been multiple theories about who he is and what he's done, but ultimately there's no justification of who he is. Now, for the last category, it's going to be sophistication, and earning 0 points would be Son of Sam. Also known as David Berkowitz, he was an American serial killer who lived in New York. He injured about 7 people and killed 8 people. While that doesn't sound like a lot, it's multiple lives being lost. It's still a tragic event. Well, this man, he didn't put a lot of thought into his murders or really the reasoning why he did it. He would approach parked cars and shoot. Like, as simple as that, he would go up and shoot through the window and then just run away. His claim was that demons told him to do it, and that's about it for David. Now, for Jeffrey Dahmer, it's really messed up, but his sophistication would have to get 1 point. And it's because he was a true psychopath. His intent wasn't only to commit murders. That wasn't even his intent at all in the first place. He wanted someone under his control. And the way he would abduct people, he didn't want to kill them. He wanted somebody that he can brainwash and have under his command the entire time. He would end up performing lobotomies onto some of his victims by pouring acid and water into their brain, destabilizing them. This almost got him caught during one point, because one of his 14-year-old victims, after being injected with water in his brain, was wandering around the streets, and he approached cops saying what happened, but he was confused and disoriented. So once Jeffrey Dahmer came up to explain that he was just his boyfriend, the police let him go, and that ended up to the death of that child. Sadly, the police could have done it, but it makes his murders more intricate and more messed up, because he tried to put so much thought into it, and he really just wanted companionship by being controlling. It wasn't it wasn't going to work out with him in the end. Of course, history can tell that. But that's why he would be sophisticated. Would be because he thought this out, and he really wanted just someone to control.